I planned it for weeks, our anniversary. Not a celebration, a funeral for my marriage.
Everything you brought into my life is gone. You are next.
I gathered every item my wife owned, her wrappers, her sewing machine, her mother's gold earrings, even the photographs from our wedding, piled them in the courtyard and set them on fire while our neighbors watched. And I filmed it. I wanted the whole world to see her break. But my wife never cried. She stood there in the smoke and smiled like she knew something I didn't. The one thing I couldn't find in that house was worth more than my business, my father's land, and everything I thought I owned.
My name is Kwame Ansah. I was a timber dealer in Kumasi. I had money. I had respect.
I had a woman who would have followed me to the edge of the earth. And I destroyed all of it because I thought power meant making someone smaller than you. If you're watching this right now, subscribe to this channel because what I'm about to tell you is going to change the way you think about the quiet people in your life. And if you think you know where this story is going, you don't. 5 years before the fire, Kwame Ansah drove his pickup truck down a red dirt road outside Obuasi, heading to inspect a timber lot his father had left him. The lot was worthless, termite-eaten teak on a slope nobody wanted, but a contact had told him there was a buyer in the area, so Kwame made the trip. He stopped at a roadside chop bar for Waki and spotted a woman sitting alone at the corner table, reading a worn geology textbook. She wore a simple cotton dress, no jewelry, no makeup. Her hair was braided flat against her head in neat cornrows, and she ate slowly, turning pages between bites, like the book was more interesting than the food. Her name was Abena Darkwa. She was 24 years old. Her father, Emmanuel Darkwa, had been a geologist, one of the most respected mineral surveyors in northern Ghana. He had spent 30 years mapping deposits across the Upper East and Upper West regions, working with mining companies, government agencies, and small-scale operations. Emmanuel had died 11 months earlier. A stroke, quick and quiet, like the man himself. Everyone in Obuasi said the same thing about Emmanuel's death. He died poor. No house in Accra, no car, no visible savings. Just a daughter with a bag of old books and a rented room above a seamstress shop. Abena sewed clothes to pay her rent. She spoke softly. She kept to herself. She was, by every visible measure, a woman with nothing. Kwame sat across from her, uninvited, and introduced himself. He was 29, broad-shouldered, confident in the way men with new money tend to be. His timber business was small, but growing. He had just landed his first commercial contract, supplying mahogany to a furniture exporter in Tema. He talked about himself for 40 minutes straight, his plans, his ambitions, the land his father left him, the deals he was chasing. Abena listened, nodded occasionally, and asked 2 questions. Just 2. Kwame later told his friends those 2 questions were the smartest things anyone had ever said to him about the timber trade. He went back to that chop bar 3 times in 2 weeks. On the 3rd visit, he asked Abena to marry him. She looked at him for a long time before answering. "I need time," she said. He gave her a week. She said yes. Years later, she would wonder what would have happened if she had said no. But she didn't. She said yes because she was lonely, because her father was dead, and because Kwame Ansah looked at her like she was the only woman in the room. She didn't know yet that he looked at everyone that way, until he didn't. When Abena moved into Kwame's compound in Kumasi, she brought one bag. His mother, Maame Akosua, stood in the doorway and watched every item come through the door. A few wrappers, a sewing kit, her father's old leather journal, thick with handwritten notes, and on her ankle, barely visible beneath the hem of her cloth, a thin cord with a small rusted key attached to it. Mame Akosua pulled Kwame aside that first evening. "A woman who brings nothing into a marriage will take everything when she leaves," she said. "Where is her family gold? Where is her bride price worth counting? You married heir, Kwame. I hope it was worth the ceremony." Kwame waved her off. He did not marry Abena for her wealth. He married her because her quietness made him feel loud. Her stillness made him feel powerful. When she sat beside him at church or at gatherings, he felt like the most important man in any room. She was a mirror that showed only his reflection, and in the beginning, that was enough. For 2 years, the marriage looked normal from the outside. Abena cooked. She cleaned. She managed the household expenses with a precision that surprised even Kwame. She could stretch 50 cedis further than most women could stretch 200. She kept a small notebook where she tracked every purchase, every CD in and out. She sewed clothes for the neighbors and never charged the ones who couldn't afford to pay. She was liked in the compound, respected, quiet. The kind of woman people described by saying, "She doesn't trouble anyone." But Kwame's business was growing faster than his character could keep up. He won a second contract, then a third. He bought a new SUV, a black Toyota Hilux with tinted windows that he parked in front of the compound like a trophy. He started wearing Italian leather shoes that cost more than Abena spent on groceries in 3 months. He joined a businessmen's club in Adem, where they drank imported whiskey on Friday nights and compared wristwatches like schoolboys comparing exam scores. By the 3rd year of the marriage, Kwame had stopped seeing Abena as his wife and started seeing her as furniture, something that existed in the background, something he only noticed when it was out of place. It started with the dinners. When Kwame invited his business associates to the house for evening meals, he would tell Abena to eat in the kitchen. "These are important people," he said, adjusting his shirt collar in the mirror. "They don't need to see you sitting there with nothing to contribute. Serve the food and go." Abena didn't argue. She prepared the jollof, the grilled tilapia, the kelawele. She served the drinks, refilled the glasses, cleared the plates, and disappeared into the back of the house like a paid worker in her own home. Then came the introductions. At a timber industry event in Accra, a business partner asked Kwame, "Where is your wife tonight?" Kwame laughed, a big, careless laugh that carried across the table. "At home where she belongs," he said. "She's just a village girl I'm helping out. You know how it is. Some of us marry for love, some of us marry because we feel sorry for someone." The men around him laughed. The joke traveled back to Kumasi faster than Kwame did. It reached Abena through a neighbor who repeated it with pity in her eyes. Abena heard it. She said nothing. One evening, Kwame came home after midnight smelling like whiskey and cologne that wasn't his. He found Abena sitting alone in the courtyard. The compound was dark except for one small lamp. She was holding something, the rusted key on its ankle cord, turning it slowly between her fingers like a rosary bead. "What are you doing sitting in the dark?" Kwame asked, dropping his car keys on the outdoor table with a clatter. "Just thinking," Abena said. "Thinking about what? You don't have anything to think about." He pointed at the key in her hand. "What is that thing you're always touching?" "It was my father's." "What does it open?" "Something he left for me." Kwame snorted. Your father left you a rusty key? That's your big inheritance." He shook his head and walked toward the bedroom. "My father left me land, timber contracts, and a name people respect. Yours left you a piece of scrap metal on a string. That tells you everything you need to know about the difference between our families." Abena said nothing. She tied the key back around her ankle, turned off the lamp, and went to bed. The affair started 3 months later. Her name was Serwa Boateng, an events planner from Accra who wore red lipstick like a weapon and gold bangles that clinked up to her elbows. Kwame met her at a business launch in a hotel ballroom. She laughed at everything he said. She told him he was powerful. She told him he was wasted on a woman who didn't know how to shine beside him. "A man like you," she said, running her finger along the rim of her champagne glass, "needs a woman who matches his energy, not one who drains it with silence." Within weeks, Serwa was showing up at the compound, not hiding, not sneaking. Walking through the front gate in high heels and perfume at 2 in the afternoon, greeting the neighbors by name like she already lived there. Kwame didn't stop her. He didn't even try. He wanted Abena to see. He wanted her to feel replaced. He wanted her to react, to cry, to fight, to beg. Something. Anything that would confirm she was as small as he needed her to be. Abena saw everything. She said nothing. Mame Akosua saw it too, but instead of correcting her son, she poured fuel on the fire. "Serwa has presents," she told Kwame over breakfast one morning while Abena washed dishes in the next room. "That quiet one you married, she'll drag you down to her level. A man's wife should lift him up, not sit in corners like a stone collecting dust." By their 5th anniversary, Kwame had made his decision. He didn't just want Abena gone. He wanted her erased. He wanted to humiliate her so completely that she would never dare show her face in Kumasi again. He wanted Serwa moved into the compound by the end of the month, and he wanted the whole neighborhood to understand why. His mother helped him plan it. They sat together one afternoon while Abena was at the market and mapped out every detail like they were organizing a funeral, which, in a way, they were. For 2 weeks, Kwame quietly gathered every item Abena owned in the house. Her wrappers, the ones her mother had chosen for her before she died, fabrics with patterns that held meaning only Abena understood. Her sewing machine, a second-hand singer she had bought with money she saved over 8 months from her seamstress work. Her mother's gold earrings, small, delicate hoops, not expensive by any standard, but the only piece of gold Abena had ever owned. Her wedding photographs, the certificates from her seamstress training in Obuasi. Her father's leather journal, the one she kept on her bedside table and sometimes read at night with a small flashlight so she wouldn't wake Kwame. Kwame picked up the journal and flipped through it once. Pages of handwritten notes in small, precise handwriting. Geological diagrams, grid coordinates, soil composition charts, things he didn't understand and couldn't be bothered to read. He tossed it on the pile with everything else. He searched for the key. He went through every drawer, every bag, every pocket, every corner of Abena's side of the bedroom, under the mattress, behind the wardrobe, inside her sewing kit. The rusted key on its ankle cord was nowhere. He shrugged. What's a rusty key worth anyway? 2 pesewas? Less? On the morning of their anniversary, Kwame told Abena he was planning a special evening. "Invite the neighbors," he said casually, pouring himself tea. "Tell them to come at 7. We're celebrating 5 years." Abena looked at him across the kitchen table. Something passed behind her eyes. Not suspicion exactly, not fear. Something quieter, like recognition. like a woman watching the last piece of a puzzle click into place. "Okay," she said. "I'll tell them." They came at 7. Mrs. Ofori from 2 compounds down, wearing her church wrapper. Old man Koranteng with his walking stick and his permanent frown. The Mensa family with their 3 small children. The Adje sisters who sold ground nuts at the junction. The young couple from across the road who had only lived there 6 months. About 30 people gathered in the courtyard expecting fufu, palm wine, maybe some high-life music from a Bluetooth speaker. A normal anniversary celebration. Instead, they found a pile. Abena's entire life, every physical thing she owned, stacked in the center of the courtyard like a bonfire waiting to be lit. Kwame stood beside it in a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, looking like a man about to give a business presentation. His phone was mounted on a small plastic tripod near the wall, recording. The red light blinked steadily in the fading daylight. Abena came out of the house last. She saw the pile. She stopped walking. Her right hand moved instinctively to her ankle, to the cord hidden beneath her cloth. She stood very still for a moment. Then she straightened her back and walked to the edge of the courtyard. "5 years ago, I made a mistake," Kwame announced. His voice was loud, rehearsed, theatrical, the voice of a man who had practiced in front of a mirror. "I brought a woman into this house who had nothing, no family name, no gold, no future. I gave her food, I gave her shelter, I gave her my name. And what did she give me in return? Silence, emptiness, a cold bed and a cold heart. 5 years of carrying dead weight." Mrs. Ofori shifted uncomfortably. She reached for her husband's arm. Old man Koranteng leaned forward on his walking stick, his jaw tightening. "So, tonight," Kwame continued, pulling a box of matches from his pocket and holding them up for everyone to see. "I am cleaning my house. Everything this woman brought into my life, everything she is, ends right here. Right now. Tonight." He struck the match. The small flame flickered orange in the evening breeze. He tossed it onto the pile. The cotton wrappers caught first. They went up fast. Bright orange flames eating through fabric that Abena's mother had chosen for her 20 years ago in a market in Obuasi. Patterns of birds and kente designs that had been wrapped around Abena's shoulders at her naming ceremony, at her father's funeral, at her own wedding. Gone in seconds. Then the photographs, their wedding day, the one picture of Kwame smiling with his arm around Abena, curling and blackening at the edges. Kwame's face in the photo disappeared first, then Abena's. Then the sewing machine began to smoke and groan, the old singer's paint blistering and peeling, the metal warping in the heat. The gold earrings, her mother's earrings, the ones Abena wore to church every Sunday, sat at the center of the pile, the thin gold softening and losing its shape, melting into something unrecognizable. 2 women in the crowd covered their mouths. One of the Adje sisters started crying openly. A child asked, "Mama, why is the man burning the ladies' things?" The mother pulled the child closer and didn't answer. Old man Koranteng shook his head slowly, planted his walking stick, and turned to leave. As he passed Kwame, he said without looking at him, "Kwame Ansa, your father would be ashamed of you tonight. Deeply, deeply ashamed." Kwame didn't hear him. He was watching Abena. She stood at the far edge of the courtyard. The firelight moved across her face in waves of orange and shadow. She watched her mother's earrings melt. She watched her father's journal catch, page after page of Emmanuel Darquois' careful, meticulous handwriting turning to white ash. 30 years of geological fieldwork dissolving into the night air. She watched every photograph of her marriage disappear. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't move toward the fire or away from it. She didn't look at Kwame. She looked directly into the camera on the tripod, directly into the lens, and she smiled. Not a broken smile. Not the forced smile of a defeated woman trying to hold herself together. A real smile. Calm, knowing, patient. The smile of a woman watching a door open that she had been standing behind for 5 years. Something shifted in Kwame's chest, a hairline crack in his confidence that he couldn't name or explain. He pushed through it. "Serwa!" he called toward the gate. Serwa Boateng entered the compound in a gold dress and new shoes, her bangles catching the firelight. She walked to Kwame's side, took his arm, and turned to face the silent crowd with a smile that said she had already won. "This is my new woman," Kwame announced, "the one who deserves to stand beside me." Nobody clapped. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The only sound in the courtyard was the fire consuming the last of Abena's possessions, and somewhere, far away, a dog barking. Abena untied the wrapper from around her waist. She wore a simple dress underneath. She folded the wrapper neatly, carefully, and set it on the concrete bench by the compound wall. Then she walked toward the gate. She didn't look at Kwame. She didn't look at Serwa. She walked past the silent neighbors, past the tripod still recording with its blinking red light, and out into the street. She carried nothing with her, nothing at all, except the thin cord around her ankle with the small rusted key that nobody had ever thought to ask about twice. She walked to the main road and flagged down a trotro heading south, Accra, 4.5 hours through the darkness. She sat by the window, pressed her forehead against the glass, and watched the night pass. She did not cry. She had cried for the last time 2 years ago, alone in the bathroom at midnight, after Kwame told his friends she was just a village girl he felt sorry for. She had made a decision that night that she would never cry for Kwame Ansa again. She had kept that promise. The law office of Ofori Atta and Partners occupied 2 rooms above a print shop on a quiet side street in Osu, Accra. No marble reception, no glass walls, just plastic chairs in a small waiting room and a ceiling fan that clicked on every 3rd rotation. Abena arrived at 8 in the morning. She had slept at a hostel near Kainchi Market and taken a shared taxi across the city at dawn. She hadn't eaten since the night before, but she wasn't hungry. Her mind was clear in a way it hadn't been in years, like smoke lifting from a room. Mr. Samuel Ofori Atta was 63 years old. He wore wire-rimmed glasses and a short-sleeved shirt buttoned to the neck. He had been Emmanuel Darkwa's lawyer for 22 years. He was the only person alive, besides Abena herself, who knew what the key opened. "I was wondering when you'd come," he said when she sat down. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. He could see it on her, the way a person looks when they've finally let go of something heavy they were carrying for too long. Abena placed the rusted key on the wooden desk between them. It looked like nothing, a piece of scrap metal, the kind of thing a child might find in the dirt and play with for an afternoon before tossing it aside. Mr. Ofori Atta picked it up carefully, almost reverently. He opened a drawer, pulled out a sealed brown envelope, and handed it to Abena. Inside was the address of a bank in Cantonments and a safety deposit box number. "Your father was the most patient man I ever knew," Mr. Ofori Atta said, leaning back in his chair. "He spent 30 years walking land that other geologists wouldn't touch. Riverbeds in the Upper East during Harmattan. hillsides near Bongo that the big mining companies ignored because the terrain was too rough and the potential volumes seemed too small for industrial extraction. But your father wasn't looking for volume, he was looking for quality. And he found it. Abena took a taxi to the bank in Cantonments. She presented the key, her national identification card, and her father's death certificate. A bank officer led her down a narrow staircase to a basement vault. The safety deposit box was large, the size of a small suitcase. She opened it with the key. Inside were 3 items. The first was a certified geological survey, 72 pages of painstaking analysis that Emmanuel Darkwa had conducted over 15 years of fieldwork. The survey documented a high-grade deposit of sapphires and tantalite across 200 acres of land in the Bongo district of the Upper East region. The deposit was deep but accessible, using modern extraction methods. The quality was exceptional. Gem-grade sapphires of a deep cornflower blue that European and East Asian markets paid extraordinary prices for, and tantalite, a mineral critical to electronics manufacturing. The second item was a land registration document, 200 acres in Bongo district, registered in the legal name of Abena Darkwa since she was 19 years old. Her father had transferred the title to her 6 years before his death. The registration was clean, unchallenged, properly filed with the Lands Commission. Nobody had ever contested it because nobody knew what was underneath it. The third item was a valuation report. 3 years earlier, 2 years into her marriage to Kwame, Abena had quietly contacted a South African mining consultancy through Mr. Ofori Ada. She had sent them her father's survey data without revealing her identity. They had conducted an independent assessment, cross-referencing satellite geological imagery and international mineral databases. Their conclusion was a single figure on page 14 of the report. Estimated value of extractable mineral deposits, $14.2 million. Abena had known. She had known the entire time. Through every silent dinner in the kitchen, through every introduction where Kwame called her a village girl, through every night Serwa walked through the compound gate in perfume and gold, through every insult from Mame Akosua, through the fire. Her father's last words to her, whispered from his hospital bed in Obuasi with oxygen tubes in his nose and his hand gripping hers, came back to her now with the force of prophecy. The key is your future, Abena. Never show it to a man who doesn't deserve to hold it. She never had. Abena did not start a company. She did not open a boutique or launch a brand. She did not post on Instagram or give interviews or stage a public comeback designed to make Kwame jealous. She did something quieter. And it destroyed him more completely than any revenge ever could. Through Mr. Ofori Ada, Abena engaged a reputable international mining consortium, a joint British-Ghanaian operation that specialized in ethical, small-scale mineral extraction in West Africa. She licensed the mining rights to her land in Bongo district for a 20-year term. The consortium would handle all extraction, processing, and export. Abena would receive structured quarterly payments, royalties, plus a percentage of gross mineral yield. The first quarterly payment arrived 8 weeks after the night of the fire. The amount deposited into Abena's bank account was more money than Kwame Ansa had earned in his entire career in the timber business. Every CD, every contract, every deal, combined, it didn't match. Abena rented a modest 3-bedroom house in East Legon, Accra. Not a mansion behind walls, not a showpiece. A simple house with a small garden, a mango tree in the yard, and a kitchen where she could cook her own meals in peace. She bought a new sewing machine, industrial grade this time, a proper one, and began teaching free sewing classes to young women in the neighborhood. Not for income, for something she needed more than money: purpose. 6 months after the fire, she did one public thing. She established the Emmanuel Darkwa Women's Vocational Center in Obuasi, on the same street where she had once rented a single room above a seamstress shop. The center offered free professional training in tailoring, leatherwork, beadmaking, and small business management. It was funded entirely by Abina's mining royalties. The sign above the front door read, "For every woman who was told she had nothing." She didn't announce any of this, but Kumasi is not a city that keeps secrets for long. The whispers traveled through the networks that actually matter in Ghana: market women, church prayer groups, trotro conversations, hairdressing salons, seamstress shops, the places where real information moves faster than any internet connection. Have you heard about Kwame Ansa's wife? The quiet one? The one whose things he burned on their anniversary? She's worth millions. Her father left her a mine, sapphires, real ones. She knew the whole time she was married to him. She just never told him. The story grew as it traveled. Some versions said the mine was worth 50 million. Some said 100. Some said Abena had bought Kwame's compound and demolished it. None of that was true. But the core of the story was true, and the core was devastating enough. Meanwhile, Kwame's world was collapsing on a schedule he could not control and did not see coming. It started with the timber contract. A government anti-corruption audit flagged irregularities in the bidding process for several state supply contracts, including Kwame's. He wasn't personally guilty of corruption, not directly, but his name appeared on a list of contracts under review. And in Ghana's business environment, appearing on that list was enough. The contract was suspended pending investigation. His cash flow stopped overnight. Serwa noticed immediately. She had a predator's instinct for money, specifically for its absence. Within 2 weeks of the contract suspension, she stopped returning Kwame's phone calls. Within a month, she had packed her gold dress and her bangles and moved back to Accra without leaving a note. She took everything she'd brought. She left everything that was broken. Kwame sold the Toyota Hilux first, then the living room furniture, then his father's wristwatch, the one thing he'd said he would never sell. His mother, Mame Akosua, fell ill with kidney disease. She needed dialysis twice a week at Komfo Anokie Teaching Hospital. The bills were enormous. Kwame fell behind within a month. Then the video resurfaced. Someone, Kwame never discovered who, had saved the recording from the anniversary night. The full video, Kwame's speech, the fire, the wrappers burning, the gold earrings melting, Abena's smile, Serwa's gold dress entrance, all of it. The video was uploaded to Facebook without context and shared across WhatsApp groups like a fever. Within a week, it had been viewed over 2 million times. Within 2 weeks, it had been reposted with commentary across West Africa and the diaspora. The comments were merciless. Thousands of them, every language, every country. Variations of the same message. This man burned a millionaire's wife's things and thought he was powerful. He filmed his own downfall. The key was on her ankle the whole time, and he never knew. Business partners who had once called Kwame chairman stopped answering his calls. The businessmen's club in Adum quietly revoked his membership. Old man Koranteng told anyone who asked, "I said it that night." His father would be ashamed. But some men can't hear truth until the whole world goes silent around them. 8 months after the fire, Kwame heard about the vocational center in Obuasi. He heard that Abena would attend the official opening ceremony, and he made a decision that proved, once and for all, that he had learned nothing. He borrowed money from a cousin for a bus ticket. He bought a clean shirt from a second-hand stall. Not expensive, but pressed and decent. He rehearsed his apology for 3 days, standing in his rented room and speaking to the wall. He would kneel. He would weep. He would beg forgiveness in front of the cameras he heard would be there for the local press coverage. He would present himself as a changed man, a humbled man. And if Abena opened the door even a crack, even a sliver, he would push through it and never let go. Not because he loved her, because she had money, and he had nothing. He arrived in Obuasi on a Saturday morning. The vocational center stood on Adansi Street, a wide, freshly painted building in yellow and white with the dedication sign above the entrance. About 200 people had gathered outside, women mostly in their best church clothes, but also local government officials, journalists from Kumasi FM and Obuasi Community Radio, and a photographer from the Daily Graphic who was adjusting his lens near the front door. Abena stood at the entrance in a simple white dress. Her hair was natural, cut close to her head. She wore no jewelry except one piece, her father's rusted key, now cleaned and restored, and set into a gold pendant that hung from a thin chain around her neck. She looked calm. She looked whole. She looked like a woman who had walked through fire and come out the other side carrying nothing she didn't need. Kwame pushed through the crowd. People recognized him. He felt their eyes like heat. The whispers spread through the gathering like the fire he had once set. That's him, the husband, the one from the video, the one who burned everything. He reached the front. Abena saw him. Her expression did not change. Not surprise, not anger, not satisfaction, not pity. Her face was perfectly still, like the surface of water that nothing could disturb. Kwame dropped to his knees on the concrete. Right there, in front of 200 people, 3 cameras, and the photographer from the Daily Graphic. Abena! His voice cracked on her name. I was wrong. I was a fool. I was blind. I didn't see what I had. I let my mother's words poison me. I let Serwa's flattery blind me. Everything I did to you, the burning, the humiliation, the years of cruelty, I was the one who was worthless, not you, never you. He clasped his hands together. Please, forgive me. Take me back. Give me another chance. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for what I destroyed. The crowd went silent. 200 people held their breath. Some women shifted on their feet and exchanged glances. Maybe she'll forgive him. He sounds broken. Everyone deserves mercy. She should take him back. That's what God would want. For a long, suspended moment, there was a real possibility hanging in the air. Kwame could feel it. The cameras were rolling. The narrative could shift. The humbled husband, the gracious wife, a redemption story that might erase the video and replace the shame with something softer. Abena looked down at him. She looked at him for a very long time. 10 seconds. 20. The crowd waited. Even the photographer lowered his camera. Then she turned. She turned away from Kwame and faced the gathered women. This center, she said, and her voice was steady, clear, and completely calm. She didn't need to shout, is for every woman who was told she had nothing, women whose things were burned, women who were made to eat alone in their own kitchens, women who were called village girls in front of strangers, women who were introduced as charity cases by the men who were supposed to love them. She paused. I built this place so that every woman who walks through these doors will know one thing. Your value was never in what someone else could set on fire. Your value is what you carry inside yourself. And no match, no man, No fire on earth can touch that. The crowd erupted. 200 people applauding, some crying, some raising their hands. The photographer from the Daily Graphic captured the image that would appear in the next morning's paper. Abena Darkwa, standing at the entrance of her father's memorial center, the gold pendant catching the afternoon light, and behind her, still kneeling on the concrete with his clean second-hand shirt and his rehearsed apology, Kwame Ansa, alone, forgotten, irrelevant. She walked inside without looking back. The crowd followed her in. Kwame remained on his knees until a young security guard tapped him gently on the shoulder and said, "Excuse me, sir. You're blocking the entrance." That was 14 months ago. I live in a rented single room in Adum now. One room. Shared bathroom down the corridor. The kind of place I used to drive past without noticing existed. Serwa blocked my number before the video reached 1 million views. She was already with someone else, a car dealer in East Legon. I heard she's happy. I try not to think about that. My mother died 4 months ago. Kidney failure. I couldn't afford the funeral I promised her. My uncles paid for it. They didn't let me give a speech at the service. My cousin told me afterward that one of my aunties said, "He burned his wife's mother's earrings. Let him sit in the back where he belongs." So I sat in the back. I sit in the back of everything now. The timber business is finished. The contracts, the SUV, the Italian shoes, the businessmen's club, all gone. The compound where I set the fire, I couldn't make the rent. Another family lives there now. I passed it on a trotro last month and saw their children playing in the courtyard, running and laughing, their small feet slapping against the concrete, right on top of the burn marks. My burn marks. Their feet on my shame. I still see the video sometimes. Someone shares it in a WhatsApp group, and my phone buzzes with messages. "Is this you, Kwame?" "Chairman, what happened to you?" I don't answer anymore. I watched the video once, all the way through. I saw myself standing in that white shirt, rolling up my sleeves, striking the match, giving that speech like I was a king pronouncing judgment. And I saw Abena's face through the smoke. That smile. That calm, steady, knowing smile. She wasn't breaking. She was already free. She had been free the whole time. I was the one in the cage. She knew. The entire marriage. 5 years. She sat in my house wearing a rusty key around her ankle, holding $14 million in silence, watching me call her nothing. And she never said a word. Not because she was afraid, not because she was weak, because she was watching. Watching to see if I would ever become the kind of man who deserved to know what she was worth. I never did. I think about what I burned. I think about it every day. Her mother's earrings, gold melting in the heat, reformed into something ugly and shapeless in the ash. Her father's journal, 72 pages of brilliant field work by a man who walked the earth for 30 years with his eyes open, and I threw it on a pile without reading a single page. I burned the map to $14 million and used it as kindling for my ego. Her sewing machine, her wedding photographs, her certificates, every piece of evidence that she existed before I met her. I turned it all to smoke because I wanted her to feel as small as I secretly felt. But she was never small. She was never empty. She was never nothing. I was. I just couldn't see it because I was too busy looking in the mirror. Last month, I heard the vocational center graduated its first class. 47 women, seamstresses, leather workers, small business owners. Someone showed me the photograph online, all 47 standing in front of the building, holding certificates, smiling. And there, in the center of the group, was Abena, wearing the gold pendant, her father's key. The only thing I couldn't find on the night I burned everything she owned. A rusted key, worth $14 million, and I called it scrap metal. I don't know where Abina lives now. I don't have her number. I don't know if she ever thinks about me, and I hope she doesn't. I hope she forgot my name the way I forgot her worth. The quietest person in your house may be carrying the future you'll one day beg for. I thought I was burning Abina's life that night, but the fire chose its real victim. She walked away with one rusted key, and I stayed behind with ashes, regret, and a life I destroyed with my own hands. So before you humiliate someone who loves you, remember this. Sometimes the match you light for another person becomes the fire that burns down your entire future.